أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على حبيب إله العالمين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، ولا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، إمام زماننا وولي نعمتنا الحجة بن الحسن المهدي فداه أرواح العالمين. Let us first and foremost raise our hands and wholeheartedly do dua for our living Imam, our 12th Imam, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا، وهب لنا رأفته ورحمته وعونه ودعاءه وخيره ما ننال به سعة من رحمتك وفوزا عندك يا كريم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and thank you once again for attending this class. So I promised you last week that I will take you out of the grave in this session, but I remembered an important, a very touching story by one of our ulama that I had to mention before we continue in the topic of eschatology and what happens after the grave, the judgment day. So this session will be dedicated to one story. Inshallah, I won't take much of your time, but I think it's one of those invaluable stories. As an introduction, some of the stories that we hear about the life of or the world of Barzakh, they relate to dreams. Now, these dreams, some of them are mentioned by anonymous people, some strangers mentioning some dreams mentioned in some books. There are some dreams, however, that are mentioned by ulama. So they have their weight to them. Ulama, at the end of the day, they know what is valuable. They know what is worthwhile to be mentioned. And hence there is a book for those of you who are interested to endeavor into this world, the world of Barzakh, the stories that surround the world of Barzakh. There is a book by the name of Darus Salam. I'm not quite sure whether it has been translated into English, but at least for those of you who understand Arabic, Darus Salam is a work compiled by Al-Muhaddith An-Nuri. He is one of the highly respected scholars in our modern age. Muhaddith An-Nuri is a teacher to Sheikh Abbas Al-Qummi, the author and the compiler of Mafatih Al-Jinan. And he is the one who compiled the encyclopedia known as Mustadrak Wasail Al-Shia, an invaluable book. So Muhaddith An-Nuri has a number of works, one of which is Darus Salam. He speaks about the world of Barzakh. He mentions many important stories that carry a lot of weight in them in terms of their effects that they have on us. And by the way, Muhaddith An-Nuri, he's a very unique personality, if you like. I advise you to go read his biography. But anyway, I don't want to go out off topic. So Muhaddith An-Nuri mentions a number of stories in regards to the world of Barzakh. One of the stories, now this story is not mentioned in Darus Salam, but it is mentioned in history by some respected scholars and preachers. This story is mentioned, it relates to Al-Mirza Hassan Al-Shirazi, this erudite, this eminent, highly illustrious marja and scholar, um, who is responsible for the fatwa against buying tobacco uh, from the British, and with that he expelled the British army from Iraq. So that was just the context. Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi is involved in the story that I am about to mention. Inshallah, most of the attendees have already attended, because I want you to listen from the beginning so that it makes sense towards the end. So, where are we? We are still in the world of Barzakh. I know this negates the promise that I gave you. Apologize for this, but I wanted to mention the story before, inshallah, we can continue the life after the Barzakh. So, what is this story? Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, rahmatullahi alayh, he was around 2 centuries ago, or less than 2 centuries ago. He lived in the city of Samarra because he wanted to revive this sacred city and expand the seminary in Samarra. So he migrated to Samarra. He was in Najaf, but he moved to Samarra. People would go visit the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Back then, this was a very lengthy process. It's not like 2 or 3 weeks. It was more like 3 to 6 months. People would write their will, because many of them would go and they would not make it back home. They would die. Some people used to go to Hajj. It takes them 6 months to arrive to the house of Allah, to Mecca. And they would think to themselves that this took me half a year to arrive to come to, and so I might as well stay for another year. And so they would do their pilgrimage twice, and then they would head back home. So people in this journey to Hajj, they would visit other sacred areas, other sacred shrines. So some people coming from very far, far away, they would come and they would visit. They go to Iraq, they go to Palestine. In Iraq, they would go to Najaf, Samarra, Karbala, Kadhimain. They make this a visit that they can. It was, for many, it was once in a lifetime opportunity. So they wanted to make the best of it and might as well visit all the infallibles, alayhum salam. So people would come and visit Samarra. Now, back then, there weren't any trusts, right? Any bank institutes that people can that they can entrust their money, and they would travel, then come back and take their money. They were thieves. You can't just leave your wealth at your place. So what they would do, they would entrust some people with their wealth, especially when it comes to traveling. It was a very difficult process, especially you had pirates, people, they usurp people's money and wealth in the way to these sacred places. A man comes to Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, who happened to be a businessman. Now, he was a businessman, but he was a very trustworthy businessman. People had entrusted him with their money in this journey. What he did, this merchant, he comes to Samarra. He was a smart person. He comes to Samarra and he comes and visits Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, right? So he visits Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, and he says, Sayyidina, I have a big amount of money with me, gold, silver, whatnot, that I've been entrusted with. But I want to do this journey, and I want to go to Hajj. I want to visit the sacred shrines. I can't just, carry a bag with me full of money. So I would like to ask you if you have a person that I can entrust this wealth with. Obviously, marja', he has people who give him khumos, he has some money in his hands that he, on his turn, is entrusted with. So Mirza Hassan Shirazi said, yes, I have a very reliable man who is my left hand, so to speak, and you can entrust him. You can give him whatever money you want. Finish your visitation and finish that journey of yours. Come back to him, take your money, and head back home. So the merchant, he said, who is this man? Mirza Hassan Shirazi, he pointed out at a man sitting next to him. He said his name is Al-Hajj Ja'far. Al-Hajj Ja'far, a highly respected person in the office of Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi. So this merchant now approaches Al-Hajj Ja'far. He said, I have some money that I want you to take care of until I can come back. He said, yes, not a problem. Now, these people that were entrusted with a lot of money, what they would do, they would entrust other people. That's how it used to work. In some instances, they have some pieces of land, or maybe they go in deserted areas, and they would dig some trees, the ground under some trees, and they would hide the money. That's how, it was back then. So the businessman, he comes and he gives him the money. Then he says, is that it? He says, yes, this is it. And I will write down in my logbook whatever you have given me. He counts it. And he said, don't you worry about it all. Just go and come back. Inshallah, everything will be safe. The businessman goes to Hajj. He finishes the pilgrimage. He visits the imams, all these sacred areas. It takes him a while, perhaps a couple of months, maybe 5-6 months. Then when he finishes, now he wants to head back home. He comes back to Samarra. So now he goes to the house of Al-Hajj Ja'far, the one entrusted with the money that he gave him. He knocks the door. When someone comes out and he said, who do you want? He says, Al-Hajj Ja'far. He said, Al-Hajj Ja'far has passed away. He's dead. This is the taqdeer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No problem. Perhaps he was an old man. And so he's died. He has died. He said, okay, I've entrusted him with some money, and most definitely he has written that down where he's put the money. So they said, yes, there is in fact a book where he had written all the names, the amounts, the places that he had hidden the gold and whatever he had, right? So they come and they open that book. It was a very thick book. They start going through the names of the people that have entrusted him with their money. So one by one, it takes them a couple of hours until they come to the end of the book. And the name of this man, the name of this merchant, is not mentioned anywhere. So someone who was in the presence, he said, maybe we've missed, we've skipped some names. Let's just go back and do this once again. It's a lengthy process, but there is no other choice. So they go again, name after name, one by one, until they come to the end of the book. There is absolutely no mentioning of the name of this businessman. So he's a bit perplexed. They head to who? They go to Al-Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, the marja', the one who pointed out and mentioned the name of Al-Hajj Ja'far. He comes to him, Salamun alaykum Sayyidina. I came here and I sought your advice. Then I gave the money to this guy. He passed away. You know him? Yes. Then, now that we looked in his book, there is no name of his. There is no mention of my name. So Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, he intervenes. He says, okay, maybe there are other books. Maybe there are other, pages, other places that he used to mention. Look into his will. Religious people, they usually have their will. So look in his will, they look, and they come with no conclusion, with no outcome. His name is not mentioned. So now he has passed away, and the guy needs his money. There is no way to connect with Al-Hajj Ja'far. Remember, the topic that we're talking about is Al-Barzakh, the world after death. Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, he thinks for a moment, then he says such and such. He addresses the businessman. He says, look, I believe you because you came to me and you told me about this. And now Al-Hajj Ja'far has passed away. In similar occasions, what would you do? If the guy has passed away and there is no way that he can reach out to you, what is a preferred stance? What is recommended for you to do? To forgive the guy. I mean, his hands are severed from this life. And so we basically can't do anything about this. Maybe if in the future we happen to find it, then that's another case. Otherwise, now you want to go back, obviously can't stay in this country, so maybe this is the end of the story. And so just forgive him. He says, the businessman says, Sayyidina, first of all, this is a big amount of money. It's not like, something insignificant. This was too much. But more importantly, it wasn't mine. I was entrusted with this money because I was, a person that other people can depend on, those people who have come to Hajj. And maybe this wasn't even their money. It's not like I can go to one after the other and ask them for forgiveness. First of all, maybe they won't forgive because they don't know who the guy is, and why would they forgive? It was a lot of money. Maybe it was their life saving. That's what they used to do, right? They want to go to Hajj. They save for, their whole life. Now they come to Hajj. Maybe they want to give khumus. So a portion of this maybe belongs to Imam Sahib al-Zaman. A portion of this belongs to the descendants of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sadat, the poor Sadat. And so it's a very complicated thing. It's better than me that I don't have this authority to just dismiss all of this and forgive Al-Hajj Ja'far. There has to be something to be done about this. So Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, there are a lot of lessons as we proceed in this story, but just look at the ulama. You find them very humble. I once visited Ayatollah al-Udma Sayyid al-Sistani with my respected father and some of the family members, and he was telling my father that this house that I'm living in is, alhamdulillah, is a rent. I've rented this house. Sayyid al-Sistani, who can basically buy all of Iraq, he's living in a rent. So this humility, this humbleness, it tells you a lot. And especially them being ulama means they have the keys to a lot of things. Ilm is the keys to everything, right? But they don't manifest, they don't showcase because they don't want to brag about anything. But ulama are the most valuable asset we have in society. I know there is a lot of war against the seminary, the hawza, the fuqaha and the ulama. Let us be vigilant and let us understand the situation. That was just in parentheses. So Mirza Hassan Shirazi, when he hears the reply of this merchant that there is no way I can forgive Al-Hajj Ja'far and there has to be something that we have to do about this, he said, okay, as we say, let's pull the big guns. Mirza Hassan Shirazi said, okay, there is only one way we can figure out and find where Al-Hajj Ja'far has placed your money and your wealth. Do you want to know? Now, this is not an easy task. Are you ready to endeavor? It's going to be a journey. It's going to be a long set of things that you have to undergo and do. So the merchant said, Sayyidina, I have no other option. So whatever it is, I'm willing to do it. He said, okay. You're now in the city of Samarra. You need to pack up and go to the city of Al-Najaf Al-Ashraf, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. I will give you a list of things that you take with you and go to the cemetery of Wadi as-Salam. So that now you can connect between the story and our topic. You go to the cemetery and the graveyard of Wadi as-Salam. Again, where is Wadi as-Salam? Where is this graveyard and how significant it is? Is it? According to the hadith that we've mentioned before, the souls of all the mu'mineen from the beginning of creation till the day of judgment, whoever lives on this earth, then when they die, their soul will be kept in that blissful place called Wadi Salam. So now I will teach you certain things. There are some what we call as adhkar, dhikr, right? Certain surahs that you have to recite. Perhaps you have to be in a specific situation, like doing ghusl and praying certain prayers. And then also ultimately start repeating those dhikrs that I have taught you. Go to the cemetery and do that. If you want to know where Al-Hajj Ja'far has placed your wealth. So Bismillah. The merchant stands up, he leaves. He goes to where? He goes to Al-Najaf Al-Ashraf. He goes to the cemetery. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He opens the book or that letter that Al-Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi gave him, and he started doing exactly what his marji', the alim, he instructed him to do. So he does this. Now, I cannot remember the exact specifics and the details of the story. Maybe some of them are just in my mind. For example, the timing of all of this, whether it should be, for example, a Thursday night, the middle of the night, until what time, and so on and so forth. But I think that's a bit irrelevant. So the story is that he goes there. Let's say that the first Thursday night, he does all these a'mal, but then Fajr comes, the sun comes out, and he finds no effect out of his a'mal. So he didn't see Mirza Al-Hajj Ja'far, and he came with nothing. So what he does now, because again he doesn't have an option, he goes back to Al-Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi. Where was he placed? Where was he? He was in Samarra. So it's around 2-3 hours. He goes to Samarra, he comes to Al-Mirza and he says, Sayyidina, I did what you told me, but I saw nothing, I heard nothing. Hajj Ja'far didn't come to me. And so, do you have other options? He said, okay, do this again next week. So again, Thursday, or maybe it was a Friday, do these a'mal. He goes back to Al-Najaf Al-Ashraf. He does the a'mal one other week. Again, he doesn't see anything. He comes back to Samarra. So maybe it continued for 3 weeks. Then when he tells him that, Sayyidina, I'm not seeing him, it's not helping in any way. Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, they say that he lowered his face, lowered his gaze. And maybe he hit one of his hands on the other and he said, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He showed some remorse. His gesture, his facial expressions changed. He all of a sudden became very sad. I said, Sayyidina, what's wrong? He said, well, the fact is that if the soul of Al-Hajj Ja'far, who was a very close friend to us, he was one of the ones who cared about his congregational prayers coming to Salat al-Jama'ah every day. Al-Hajj Ja'far is not in Wadi Salam. Where is he? Because again, Wadi Salam encapsulates and carries the souls of the mu'mineen. So if his soul is not with the mu'mineen, where is he then? There is no other place, for those of you who have been attending, but where? But Wadi Barahut. Wadi Barahut is the valley of Barahut, that very scary and frightening place in Yemen, in a place called Hadramaut, in a city of Hadramaut. And so, if he is not with the mu'mineen, he is most definitely with the non-believers. So now, Mirza Hassan Shirazi is addressing the businessman. He said, are you still adamant in seeing Al-Hajj Ja'far? Do you still want to do this? He said, yes, Sayyidina, indeed. He said, but no, you don't understand me. Now it's much more difficult. It's not going to be easy. In fact, it's going to be heart-wrenching, and you could possibly collapse and die. Are you still adamant and ready to do this? He said, Sayyidina, again, I have no option. I have to do this. He said, Bismillah. Bismillah, he gave him a book, or perhaps a piece of paper or a letter. He said, do exactly as I say. You go to Yemen, you go to this city, you ask for the valley of Barahut, and then you go. Now this part, if I'm not mistaken, he said you go inside a cave. It's going to be very dark. It's going to be very scary, but you might as well do accordingly if you want the outcome that you need. He said, okay, Bismillah. The Sayyid, no. He said, no. He said, I will send someone along with you to accompany you in this journey. Because rest assured that you need another person being with you. So he packs up, he leaves. He goes to Yemen. Yemen is in the south of Arabia. So it takes him a while, perhaps 2-3 weeks, until they arrive. They go in that specific time, in the specific day, in the very specific place that they have to go. And so they go. He starts reciting the dhikrs. He starts doing exactly what he was told and ordered by Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi. So he goes through the a'mal, one after the other. It takes him a while, perhaps a couple of minutes. And by the way, I want to say this. I think it's important to say in parentheses. Brothers and sisters, there are ways that we can get in touch with the deceased, with the dead ones. But then there are legitimate ways and there are illegitimate ways. There are ways that are halal, that are permissible, and there are other ways that are impermissible, haram. The things that you would find some Sufis do, this is obviously not allowed. They do have access to the other realm, but this is not a permissible way. Yes, we have to stick with the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and do exactly what they do. Sufis, on the other hand, they come and they teach you, and sometimes they even teach you some things to recite, you thinking that this is a right thing to do. You know, they say repeat the word Ya Ali, for example, 1,000,000 times. And so you're thinking to yourself, this has to be right because I'm mentioning Ya Ali. I'm not saying Ya Muawiyah or Ya Yazid or whatnot. No, you have to be very cautious, very careful in doing what you have been told and ordered and staying away from what you haven't been told. And so it's a tricky path, a very dangerous path that we have to stick with the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Again, there is 2 methods for achieving these ways. The method in following the steps, the footsteps of the ulama, being pious, being muttaqi. This opens and paves the way and opens windows for you or God forbid going through the ways of the paths of the Sufis. Anyway, I'll close the parentheses. So now, the one mentioning the story is not the merchant, but who? The guy who accompanied this businessman. The guy who Al-Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, he sent to just be with the presence of this businessman, to comfort him. So he says, I saw the businessman. I wasn't involved in reciting the du'as because I wasn't ordered by that alim to do so. It was only him, but I was just standing next to him, or perhaps sitting next to him. And a couple of hours passed and elapsed when all of a sudden I saw this man, the businessman. He had lowered his gaze and doing the dhikr, when all of a sudden I saw him raising his head and looking upwards, and his eyes all of a sudden they opened wide, and his mouth, it also opened wide, and he stopped reciting what he was reciting. In fact, he started shaking all his body, his hands, his head, his feet. He started shaking in a very frightening way when he wasn't capable of saying anything. So he started going and saying, Then he said, where is my money? Then he said, Then he fell and collapsed, and he fainted. He fainted. Now the man that was with him, he said, there was absolutely nothing that I saw happening, right? It was just this guy, but his face started changing, turning white and yellow, and he seemed very scared, and then he fell to the ground. He said, I had some water with me. I took that water, I spilled it on his face, and he came back to conscious. He came back from his sleep and from his unconsciousness. When he saw me, for a moment, it appears that he didn't know what was going on. Where is he? He started screaming and shouting. It was very apparent that he was very, very scared, and he had seen something very scary. So he wasn't controlling himself. He just started screaming, looking, upwards and downwards, left and right. Then he said, where are we? I said, we're, in this area. He said, run. So he left everything behind. He had his shoes with him. He had something that he had carried with him, right? The bag, whatever it was. He left it and he started running. So I started packing as much as I can because it was very dark, and we had to stick together. Maybe he's gonna slip, he's gonna fall. So I ran again with him. I said, look, stop, just breathe a little bit, walk slowly. He said, run, just run. I said, what happened? He said, never mind, just run with me, trust me with this. So he's running as fast as he can, and I'm following him, and I can't reach to him because it was going very quick, but eventually he became a bit tired. He went a bit slower, and so, but he's going as fast as he can until we came out of that valley, and then we walked, and as we were walking, I'm asking him, what's going on? What did you see? He said, never mind, just walk. So we come out of the city, we come out of that country. I tell him, such and such, just tell me what you saw. He said, look, I cannot say it. It's indescribable. Let's just go. You will hear the story once we go to Al-Mirza Al-Hassan al-Shirazi. So he says, what we go, I stopped insisting of what he saw. We come to Samarra. He comes to Al-Mirza Al-Hassan al-Shirazi. He says, Sayyidina, I have to see you. There is a very important message that I have to convey to you. They sit down. He says, Sayyidina, I went to Yemen. I went to Hadramaut. I went to Wadi al-Barahut, the valley of Barahut. I did exactly what you told me. Guess what, Sayyidina? I saw Al-Hajj Ja'far. And I saw him in a very, very, very bad way. Sayyidina, let me tell you what I saw. I was engaged in this du'as and the dhikr that you told me, when all of a sudden this darkness, this pitch darkness that was before me, it transformed, it changed. I saw some doors and gates opening before my eyes. Sayyidina, do you know what gates they were? They were the gates of fire. Sayyidina, I saw the inferno. I saw Jahannam in front of me. Sayyidina, moreover, I saw two angels coming. But what kind of angels? We have two types of angels. We have the angels of mercy, the angels of rahmah, and we have the angels of adhab. They are dedicated in torture. They have anger in their face. They don't have mercy whatsoever. Sayyidina, one angel was on one side, the other angel on their side, on the other side. In the middle, I saw Al-Hajj Ja'far. I knew Al-Hajj Ja'far because I met him. I saw him before going to my journey in Hajj. Sayyidina, he was someone else. He was a black man, filled, every cell in his body was filled with fire, Sayyidina. His mouth, his eyes, they were fire. I cannot describe what I saw, but I'm trying the best. When he spoke, there was smoke and there was fire coming and emitting from his body as if his body was igniting fire. It's not like he was burning off fire. His body was of fire, Sayyidina. And so I saw him. And then there was a fork made of metal and fire in the hand of one of the angels. It was a very long and big fork. Sayyidina, that fork was penetrated in the stomach and in the chest of Al-Hajj Ja'far. So they pushed that fork so that Al-Hajj Ja'far is drawn closer to me. But he was shackled. His hands, his feet, all his body, it was cuffed and shackled with what? With iron made of fire. He was screaming in agony. You could see the remorse and you could see the sorrow in his face, in the face of Al-Hajj Ja'far. When I saw him, because they brought him to me, and so I have a request from Al-Hajj Ja'far. What is my request? I want my money. I want him to lead me and instruct me where he put the money. So when I saw him, I said, where is my money? He said, your money? Your money is beneath a tree in this specific place. So he told me where the money is. Then they pull Al-Hajj Ja'far with that fiery fork. They pull him, they take him down to the very bottom of hell, and the gates of fire are closed in front of me, and I fainted and I collapsed. Sayyidina, he told me where he placed the money. They inquired and they found, yes, it was true. So Al-Hajj Ja'far had hidden the money in a specific place. Now, why did he not mention this? He forgot. So it wasn't like he wanted to steal the money. It wasn't like this, right? He had forgotten to write down the place that he had hidden the money. But Sayyidina, the businessman, continues. Sayyidina, I want to tell you what happened afterwards. Maybe you can help him. He said, what? Mirza Hassan Shirazi, he says, what did you say? What did he tell you? He said, Sayyidina, just before they pull him into the pits of fire, he said couple of words to me. And as he was being pulled towards fire. He said, عليك بجاري القصاب. He said, go seek help for me from my butcher neighbor. That's it. So he wanted to continue talking, Al-Hajj Ja'far, who is now in the inferno, but then the angels pulled him and he couldn't finish. He said this word to me. He said, my neighbor, the butcher. That's it. The businessman concludes the story. He says, this is what I saw and what I heard. It is upon you, Sayyidina, to help him if you can. So obviously, Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, he called some of his friends, some of his assistants or friends. He said, Al-Hajj Ja'far, obviously he had a house in Samarra. In the neighborhood, he has some neighbors. Go and inspect whether there was a neighbor of his that happened to work as a butcher. So they go, they inquire, they ask this neighbor, that neighbor. No one is a butcher, and moreover, no one knows of a neighbor that happens to be a butcher in the area. So they didn't have an answer to this. Is this a metaphor that Al-Hajj Ja'far was trying to convey? Was this something figurative that he was saying? Butcher, neighbor. So Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi goes in a deep thinking, but he doesn't come with a conclusion. Then he said maybe Al-Hajj Ja'far, he was a poor man, right? He wasn't wealthy enough to purchase a house for himself. Maybe not this current house that he lived in and passed in, but rather a previous house that he has lived in. So go and inspect and go inquire about the different houses that he had rented before he dies, and maybe one of them had a neighbor who happened to be a butcher. So they go and they ask and they inspect and inquire, and they come back and they say, yes, Sayyidina. In fact, there is a house that Al-Hajj Ja'far used to live in that his neighbor is a shop, right? So it's a shop, a butchery shop, and a person owns it. So Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, he says, okay, let's stand up and go. Where to? To the house of the shop owner who happens to be the neighbor of Al-Hajj Ja'far. Let's go. Who is going? Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, the marja', the highest authority of Shia Islam at his time. He stands up, he wears his ammama, the garb, he stands up, and he has a keep of his students perhaps coming along with him. They go, they stand behind the door of this man, the butcher. Let's call him the butcher now. They knock the door. As soon as he opens the door, he finds Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi personally himself, physically standing next to his door. So he's astonished, he's mind boggled. I'm a nobody, I'm not an alim, I'm not a cleric, I'm not anything. Why is Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi now all of a sudden visiting me along with all of his students? Now, why did Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi accompany his students? Because he wants to see what the problem is, and that could play a great deal of factor in maybe him, whatever it is between him Al-Hajj and Al-Hajj Ja'far, so that, it's resolved. So Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, when he stands up next to his door, he's overwhelmed. He says, Sayyidina, is this a dream? Please come inside. Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi said, I will, with one condition. What is the condition? He said, I want you right now to forgive Al-Hajj Ja'far. All of a sudden, when this butcher, he hears the name Al-Hajj Ja'far, he stops. He was inviting But now he stops. He said, Sayyidina, I will not forgive him. But please come inside. He said, forgive him. I don't know what was the affair, what was the problem between you two, but I'm asking you to forgive him. Am I not your marja? Am I not your alim? Forgive him. He said, Sayyidina, I will not forgive him. But please come inside. He said, I ask you to forgive him. He said, Sayyidina, I want you to listen to the story. You be the judge. Let me explain myself. Please come inside. So the Sayyid comes inside. At the end of the day, he's a alim. He has a responsibility. If a person goes astray, if a person is an oppressor, if a person deserves God's punishment, who am I? Yes, I can ask for forgiveness. But if God is angry over someone, this is God's justice. So Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, he comes inside, he sits down. The man, the butcher, he said, Sayyidina, can I bring you something? Allow me. He said, no, sit down. I want to hear the story between you and Al-Hajj Ja'far. I want this to be resolved. He said, okay, let me disclose this to you, Sayyidina. I have a daughter. This daughter was proposed by a young man. We're in the neighborhood. This man, his father comes to me and he said, we would like to ask for your daughter's hand. He said, we accepted. After, some research and whatnot, we accepted. And so the word, my daughter happened to be a beautiful girl. And so the word spread that someone has asked for my daughter's hand, and we have accepted what we call in Arabic as makhtuba. So they haven't officially become married, but a husband and a wife. But now everyone knows that she is for this man. So we had accepted. Both parties had agreed that this is the case. Before this, many people had come and proposed and asked for my daughter's hand, and we sometimes either take a khira, how it happens within religious families. We take istikhara. If it's bad, if it turns out bad, maybe there is no good in this in going about with a marriage. And so people would regularly come and ask. But after what happened, after this man approaching and asking for his daughter, for my daughter's hand, and we took the istikhara and it became good, turned out good, and we accepted. So everyone succumbed to this fact that that's it. She's a daughter that has been named for someone. So now we're waiting for the man to become prepared, perhaps financially, so that he can come and they get married officially and religiously. So weeks elapsed, then months elapsed, then a year elapsed, and we're just waiting, right? The daughter is waiting, we're waiting, but inshallah everything will work out because they've come to us and we've agreed for everything. After a while, we heard that this young man who had proposed and agreed to get married to my daughter, he has actually got married to another girl. So it was astonishing for us. All this time that we've been waiting, and all of a sudden we hear that this young man is married now to another girl, not my daughter. So we approached him. I approached the father. I approached the father of the young man. I said, what happened? Hadn't we agreed? He said, well, yes, but things worked differently, and so it just didn't work out, and we apologize, and he's married. That's it. So let's just forget about this, him getting married to your daughter. For them it was very easy, but for us it was difficult. Why? because the word had spread that she is about to get engaged to this man. The problem is not exclusive to this, because now people won't propose to her because she's already, about to get engaged. The problem is that people now know the man who had come to get married, now he has backed off. What does this entail? What does this implicate? What does this tell people? That there is most probably a problem with this daughter. I mean, why would a guy approach a very beautiful girl, as it was known in the neighborhood, but then all of a sudden he changes his mind and gets married to another woman? Why would anyone do this? So another gossip, another word started spreading, that maybe there is something lurking and hidden, beneath the surface. There is a problem in this family, in this daughter, whatever it is. Sayyidina, do you know the reason? Do you know what happened? I did not figure this out until recently. The story is this. The guy who had asked for my daughter's hand for his daughter, one day he approaches Al-Hajj Ja'far. Al-Hajj Ja'far was my neighbor. We were friends, right? We had good terms with each other. He's a religious man. He is your left hand or right hand, whatever you call it. Excuse me. So he, the father of the boy who asked for my daughter's hand, he is still, inquiring just to make sure everything is okay. So one day he's chatting with Al-Hajj Ja'far. They happen to be maybe the same age or whatever. So they come across this topic that, I've asked for the daughter of your neighbor for my son. And so what are your thoughts? What do you think? So it was all positive. His daughter, she's religious. Their family are religious. There's nothing. So just to, make sure everything was okay. Al-Hajj Ja'far, he said 3 words. He just said 3 words. My dear brothers and sisters, let's just reflect over this story and try to apply it. He said 3 words. I mean, the shaitan, I'll put this in parentheses, maybe you can ponder upon later on. The shaitan will not whisper to me to kill a person. He will not whisper to me to abandon prayer, because he knows I won't. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I've lived with prayer all my life, right, so to speak. And so if I don't have second thoughts about neglecting prayer, the shaitan would not whisper to me about, just abandoning prayer. What he would whisper is backbiting. What he would whisper is hurting the heart of the mu'mineen. These things that we belittle, we would see insignificant, or some of us would. Al-Hajj Ja'far, when he was inquired from the father of the boy, right, about my daughter, he said, I want my son to get married to the daughter of your neighbor, and what I would like to think, and I would like to listen to your thoughts. Al-Hajj Ja'far, he said, I don't know. Why did he say I don't know? It appeared that he had a son. He wanted his son to get married to my daughter. That's what he wanted. Because again, my daughter is a beautiful girl, and so he wanted him to get married to my daughter. So he did not want to say anything bad. He did not want to break all of this, but he wanted his son to get married, as opposed to the son of this man. So he didn't say anything. He didn't say much, did he? He just said, I don't know. Now think about this. Sometimes saying I don't know, it has a genuinity in it, right? I really honestly don't know. Sometimes when someone asks you about something and you say, well, I don't know, that tells a lot, right? That says a lot. It says, I do know. It has implications to it. So when he said, I don't know, I thought to myself, or excuse me, that man perhaps started thinking to himself that this Hajj Ja'far is not a nobody, right? Al Hajj Ja'far is a very, when he says something, he says it after calculations and after thinking, and perhaps there is something. And so I don't know. Okay, Alhamdulillah, at least he told me I don't know. We still haven't got married. I mean, my son hasn't got married to this daughter. We haven't done anything. It's just, chats, informal speech. Let's start examining other fields. Let's start searching for other girls in town. And so they found someone else, and they got married to that someone else. You know what happened? Who is now talking? The butcher. He's addressing who? Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi. Sayyidina, the man, that young man, he got married. Al-Hajj Ja'far, his son, he got married to another one, someone else. They just changed their mind. My daughter now has grown old. The word was spread that she was about to get engaged. It did not work out. Maybe there was a problem. Those who wanted to get married, they backed off because they said that there is someone else that has proposed and they have accepted. Sayyidina, my daughter now is lonely in her room. She is depressed. She cries. She has no husband. She has no children. She has no life. And she has to bear and she has to live with all of this until she dies. Sayyidina, I do not forgive Al-Hajj Ja'far because he said these three words, I don't know. Why did he have to say this? Why did he have to oppress my daughter? Why did he have to ruin the life of my innocent daughter? Why? Sometimes you don't expect much from a non-religious person. But if it's a religious person, you expect a lot. Why did he do this? I know that he did not take that sword and kill someone. But with his words, he did a lot worse than killing a person. He killed the life of my daughter. He killed the birth of my grandchildren. He killed my daughter. So Sayyidina, you be the judge. You be the judge. I cannot forgive. It's not personal. It's because of my daughter. Every time I see her, I become remorseful. I become sad. I become sorry. So I cannot forgive Al-Hajj Ja'far. Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, Radwanullah Ta'ala alayhi, all these ulama who have sacrificed their lives to help us, right? I mean, just look, answering the questions, the fatawa, this is their life. They want to help us. When he heard the story, he said, how old is your daughter? So he said, such and such, let's say she's in her mid-40s. She's not young. He again thought for a moment, then looked at that merchant, at the businessman who witnessed and saw the torture of Al-Hajj Ja'far. He addressed him. He said, such and such, are you willing to do what it takes to help Al-Hajj Ja'far? He said, Sayyidina, yes, whatever it takes. Perhaps I'm assuming that he wanted to tell him, give them this family, your wealth, money. Just try to help them out financially, buy them a house, right? Make them come out of their lifestyle. Something along these lines, right? He was a wealthy man. He can do a lot of things. He could buy them a lot. He can do a lot. He said, yes. I am ready to do whatever it takes. He said, okay, I want you to assign me as a delegate. I want you to give me the wakala, right? I want to become your representative now that we are in this house, in this presence. I want you to get married to the daughter of this man right now, of course, obviously with the permission of the father and the permission of the daughter. Are you willing to do it? Now, the businessman, apparently he was bachelor. He did not have a wife, but he was young. So he said, are you willing to help for the sake of Allah? For the sake of Allah, help Al-Hajj Ja'far and get married to the daughter of this butcher. So he thought for a moment, it's not an easy task. I know for most of us, it's not an option, right? I mean, if I was told that there is, a widow in her mid-40s, and if you can help her come out of her misery, it's a very difficult situation. So, but that businessman, because he had seen the unseen, seen the unbearable, seen the indescribable, he thought for a moment. He said, yes, indeed, I am ready. It's not something that I want to think twice about. I want the father of this girl and the girl, I want them to forgive Al-Hajj Ja'far, and I am ready to make the sacrifice. They say that it was in that very meeting that the aqd took place. This young man, he gets married to this daughter of the butcher, and they officially get married when a couple of days later someone sees Al-Hajj Ja'far in a dream. He sees him in a very good place, and he says, convey my salam to Al-Mirza Al-Hasan Al-Shirazi, and I want you to thank him and thank the businessman. His name, he mentions his name perhaps. I want you to thank them because they rescued me and they saved me from the tortures and the adhab and the fire of Jahannam. So this is the end of the story. I apologize. It was perhaps a lengthy story, but there is only so much we can learn from this story. Let us think twice before not only what we say, but for the question marks, right? Every remark, every movement. ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. Now, I will conclude with the story, but I'm not sure if there are any questions. This is a new setup. Samahat Sayyid Mehdi, Jazahullah khair, that he made. Okay, so I'm having trouble finding. Oh, there is the question panel. Okay, yeah, don't worry about the rest of the windows. They belong to Sayyid Mehdi's class. Okay, so one of the questions, a sister says, I have an extreme fear of death and the grave. I know that to Imam Ali alayhi salam, death was sweeter than honey. Will I ever reach a point where this fear will eventually go away and I will look forward to leaving this world? Look, I think having fear of death is good in itself, as long as it doesn't bring about depression and ultimately prevent you from doing what you have to do. If it's depression, that's a problem. But if it's just fear of death in the sense that it makes you remember death, I mean, this is something that we have to be fearful of in order for us to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do. And now, the hadith says that every mu'min, I've mentioned this hadith before, every mu'min is given the option to die before death. مَا مِن مُؤْمِنٍ إِلَّا يُخَيَّرُ. So don't you ever think that you will die without your permission. No, a mu'min is given the permission. They tell him, do you want to die or do you want to stay alive? Every mu'min, once he sees what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for him, he would most definitely choose death, because we fear death due to the fact that we don't know what it is, right? We fear the unknown, and so it's going to be scary, it's going to be this and that, but Allah is merciful. If you do what Allah wants from you, then inshallah you will be granted His bliss and His mercy and paradise. So again, fear, if it means that you do good and you avoid sinning, this is what we have to have and remember. This is what we need in order to protect ourselves from the shaitan, from the sins. Makes you try to be adamant in obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even Amir al-Mu'mineen that you mentioned, Imam Ali was fearful in the sense that he would say, Ilahi, he recites the verses of Allah speaks about the inferno, خُذُوهُ فَغُلُّوهُ, this and that, and he would cry constantly on a nightly basis. Every night he would cry, he would collapse and he would faint, asking Allah for forgiveness. So this is good. But does that mean that fear has to overwhelm me in the sense that it affects my social status, as in I won't be able to have good connection with my husband, with my children, right? The sister who's asking. So obviously that shouldn't affect my life with my relatives and my friends and whatnot. But if it's in the sense that I dedicate thought and time to worshipping Allah, obeying Allah, then obviously this is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Salaam alaikum. Okay, Anonymous says, Salaamu alaikum. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. The question is not related to this session. I apologize for that. But if you don't mind answering, I'd sincerely thank you. So in the previous session, you mentioned that it's important to adhere to the wajib first. I have qada salat to pay back. Can I incorporate these qada as the nafila of my salatul layl? No, you cannot. So the mustahabbat is one thing, the wajibat is one thing. Are you allowed to pray salatul layl even if you have qada? We've mentioned this. Yes, it's okay to pray salatul layl if you have qada prayers, but obviously if you can pray the wajibat prayers, it's more important, because that's the wajib. The other is the mustahab. Now, I think you have to schedule a way in order to be able to re-pray these prayers, or just pray the qada prayers. For example, with every daily prayer that you pray 5 daily prayers of the past ones. And I know some people, some of them, they have passed away. May Allah bless them. He used to pray with every prayer. For example, he's praying Salat al-Dhuhr now. He prays 5 salats, morning, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, of his past prayers, qada prayers. So might as well just do it as fast as you can, as quickly as you can, so that you are relieved from the wajibat. But anyway, you cannot incorporate the mustahab and the wajib together, if that's your question. Okay, Anonymous says, how do we draw the line between enjoining goodness and staying out of issues that do not concern us? Obviously, enjoining as in saying if someone is abandoning the wajibat, you have the authority to tell them, right? It's in the Quran. Allah has given us this authority. المؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولى excuse me بعضهم أولياء بعض يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر. So Allah has given given us this guardianship, so that we order one another in doing good. If you see someone neglecting a wajib, you have to tell them, as long as you know that it's beneficial. If you know for sure that that person is just adamant and is careless, that's another case. Otherwise, you have to tell them. Now, the cases are clear in this regard. Now, staying out of issues that do not concern us is a different topic. I know socially, especially in some places, you'd find if someone telling you, or if you tell someone to do good and to avoid sinning, they would tell you that's not of your concern. That's wrong. That's wrong. That is not an Islamic concept, because if he's a mu'min, now if he's not a mu'min, that's another case. But if that person is a believing person, I have the duty to tell them. I have the duty to command them. Now, it's upon them whether they want to listen to us or not, but it's my duty to tell them. So again, the boundaries are quite clear when it comes to Amr al-Ma'ruf and Nahy al-Munkar. Now, staying away from issues that do not concern us. If someone has a bad habit, it's not wajib upon you. If it's not haram, it's not wajib upon you to tell them. It's just a bad habit. You want to tell them. If they feel offended, might as well just don't say anything. But if it's a wajib, if it's a haram, you are obligated to tell them. If that answers your question. Sayyid, are you saying Sufis have access to the other world? Well, look, Sufis, they have access to the shayateen, and it's mentioned in the Quran. The devils, the Satans, they are connected, right? And so, yes, the shayateen, there's two types of shayateen. You've got the ins, the human form shayateen, and you've got the jinn form shayateen. The shayateen, they're both shayateen, believe it or not, right? The human shaitan and the jinn shaitan. We don't usually refer to the human shaitan as shaitan, but in fact sometimes these shayateen are worse in their effects, in their in what they destroy, than the shayateen of the jinn. Anyway, so these two types of shayateen, they have connection. Sometimes the shaitan, a human shaitan, is not aware of that connection, but the shaitan is whispering to them, and he is conveying the message of the shaitan. For example, there's a hadith that a man one day, so I can't remember the context of the story. Maybe it was something along these lines that the imam, he did something. For example, he gave charity to the poor, and all of a sudden a man who was sitting next to the imam, he said, why are you giving him money? Don't give him money, right? He's not poor, he's this, he's that. You would always hear this. The imam said, so maybe again this is the context was this, or it was another context. The imam said, you know what happened now? The shaitan, the jinn shaitan, he spoke on your tongue. You just conveyed the message of the shaitan. You're not aware of this, but this is what happened. So you have given yourself, right, to the shaitan and made him able to convey and say what he wants. Allahu Akbar. So this is the world that we don't know about, the world of the unseen, the world of the jinn and the shayateen. Now, there are some people who do have access and are aware of this accessibility and the connection that they have with the shayateen. Yes, they do certain things that they can bring about the shayateen, they could convey their messages, they could ask them certain things, they could gain some information from them. And so this is the case with some of the Sufis. Now, most of the Sufis, I believe, they just repeat what their masters tell them, right? They don't know what's going on. But some Sufis, especially their masters and their leaders, no, they do have access to the shaitan. And we have heaps of stories, not only just mentioned, mentioned everywhere, but also in the traditions, in the hadiths, For example, someone, he said that I saw Gabriel, Jibreel alayhi salam, I saw him, and he told me such and such. The Imam said that this was not Gabriel. In fact, it was the shaitan, and he spoke to you, and he told you what he told you. So yes, when they do certain things, and they break all the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they try to strengthen their souls, they start having access to the world of the shayateen, the world of the jinn, and so they start conversing with them, and so it's a long story. Ahsantum. Anonymous says, by Allah letting Haj Ja'far say, mentioning his neighbor's name, he's saying that Jari al-Qassab, my neighbor the butcher, isn't that a mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that did not need to happen? Of course, ahsantum. That's a good point that you mentioned. Maybe Haj Ja'far did have good things that he did. Obviously, he was a good person. Spare the bad thing that he did. So maybe that helped him in being able to convey the message. And all this story, happening, maybe because eventually Allah wanted him to rest in peace and rest in paradise because of the good things that he did. So yes, there are good things, bad things, and whichever becomes the more weighty supersedes. Ahsantum. It was a good point that he mentioned. Okay, Anonymous says, Sayyid, I knew this was coming, this question. You mentioned that the family was religious, which is why they took an istikhara. I thought religious families didn't take istikhara when presented with a proposal in the first place. Well, I think istikhara is something that maybe both parties can agree upon, right? They say, look, we resort to the khira, we ask a alim, we ask him to take the khira. We both accept the outcome of the khira, if you don't mind, because the istikhara sometimes it tells us not necessarily of bad things happening between these two. Maybe there is something better waiting for one of or both of these two people. Maybe they are meant to get married to more appropriate party for them. So maybe there is nothing wrong between the two. Istikhara is just something that you ask Allah to guide you. Now, where is the istikhara? This is a key point here. See, the istikhara usually takes place when you still have ambiguity, you still have some concerns, you are still not sure whether you are to engage in a specific field. For example, you want to engage in business. So you're finding it's good, but then maybe there are some hidden things that I'm not aware of. So you take the khira. But if you are 100% sure and positive that this is morally, religiously, it ticks all the what do you call it? The boxes, then the normal method of taking khira is not, let's say, obligatory. Does that mean that you can take khira? Obviously, yes. You can take a khira. But here I want to draw it to your attention to another meaning of a khira. See, khira sometimes is referred to as to the thing that you do in order to come out of your your hayra, of when you don't know which side to take, right? What to do, you take the khira. The other meaning of khira is something, the other meaning of khira applies to everything that you want to do, whether you have doubt or you don't. What is this khira? Is you asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you, to help you, and to make the decision and to choose what is good for you. If something falls in your heart that you should proceed, you might as well proceed. If the opposite falls in your heart, that no, there is something wrong, or maybe you just changed your mind, you might as well not proceed. So this also is called istikhara, as in you ask Allah for goodness. You ask Allah for khair. This is what istikhara means. Now, the first meaning of istikhara obviously applies mostly when you don't know whether you should proceed or not, and so you resort to khira. Now, in this case, the case of getting married, obviously there is always a blank spot. You don't know, you're not 100% sure. If you are, Bismillah, just say astaghfirullah, do the other type of istikhara, pray to raka'at, ask him to make this a blessed marriage and proceed. But if you still are concerned, if you still have questions, you don't know, you're not, too positive, then you can resort to khira. There is nothing wrong with that. It does not negate anything, inshallah. Okay, Ahmed Naqwi says, what is the name of the book where the story is mentioned? To be honest with you, I heard it from a scholar, but maybe you can find it in the book of Darus Salam. I remember once someone mentioning a reference to it, but I cannot remember it right now, the exact reference. But maybe Darus Salam, because there are a number of stories that ulama were involved in the likes of this story. Brother Taqi says, is your compiled book At-Tamheed ila Ilm al-Aqaid being referenced by Sayyid Mahdi and the one you referenced in your class on Tasawwuf available online? Unfortunately not. Inshallah, it's been prepared with your du'as, and I'll mention this so that you do du'a for me. Inshallah, the shrine of Imam Hossein alayhi salam, they're preparing it so that it is published, and once it is, inshallah, I'll get the final copy and I'll put it online. And so, yeah, not yet. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidina. Brother Hussein says, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Dear brother, may Allah bless you. Inshallah, Allah blesses us all. Inshallah, for all of your efforts also, for coming and attending and putting time and listening. No question. Oh, Jazakumullah khair. Ahsantum. Okay, I think we need to conclude. I'll just finish with one question with your permission. Okay, Anonymous says, when I was young, I used to pray, but I used to pray them very quickly, and now that I've grown up, I'm thinking about those prayers. Will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punish me or not? Look, there is a hadith that, now I need to make sure of the exact verbatim of the hadith, because this is a delicate issue. The details are important, but the Imam says that Allah chooses whichever is better in your prayers, as in if you pray the prayer twice, Allah chooses the better one. But that doesn't mean that you need to become a waswas, those who cannot make a decision and so they pray and then re-pray and then pray it again. I've seen people, they're troubled in these situations. Don't be a waswas. What you can do is you can pray, the ulama say, the qada of nawafil. The nawafil, the recommended prayers, you can pray nawafil. And if you don't pray the nawafil, it's recommended to pray the qada of the nawafil, right? So, for example, you've got Salat al-Dhuhr, the nawafil of Salat al-Dhuhr are 8 raka'at, so 4 of 2 raka'at. What they do is that they make up for what shortcomings, what you had in your obligatory prayers. Okay, are you with me until now, up to this point? So if you have missed the recommended prayers, it's recommended that you pray them. Now, if you cannot pray them, it's recommended to pay and to give money to the poor, to give some money to the poor. If you do this, inshallah, it will recompense, if you like, or make up for the recommended prayers that you have not prayed. Now, the hadith says that the recommended prayers, how does the verbatim go? So basically it makes up for the obligatory prayers. That's why the recommended prayers are always double the amount of the obligatory. This is the case with the salat, and also this is the case with the siyam, with fasting. Fasting is one month, but the recommended is 2 months, right? And also the prayers are 17 portions, 17 raka'at. The recommended are 34. So that, because the idea behind it is that it compensates and makes up for the obligatory prayers. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much. Again, I'm sorry for the extended session. Wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.